This is my show, Nailed It. I'm your host, Curtis Warden. Across from me is a very special guest of mine, someone who I admire tremendously. He's helped change my life. I think we started meeting, like 5 years ago?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. This is Jose David. Jose is my personal therapist. I've also referred him to many other people in the real estate industry. You just work wonders.
I appreciate that.
You're really good. Unlike most therapists that I've been to, and I've been to a lot because when you first met me, we talked about it. Also, Kendra knows that you're coming on the podcast.
Oh, that's
today.
awesome.
So she's like super excited to rewatch it.
Yeah.
So this is a tape delay of about 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that we have them loaded up and then they'll finally go. I wanted you to come on the podcast because several of my buddies have been talking about mindset.
Yeah.
You'll know a couple of names.
Yeah.
But this guy, Evan Campion, came on. He's my personal realtor for my high-end flips. And then I have Yvonne. And I know Yvonne. I mentioned to Yvonne that you're not allowed at all to say anything.
Yeah,
but
I can't say anything.
I've mentioned to several people that you should come on this. But Evan really hit it hard. He said that the toughest thing about marriage was in blending is his time requirements, and that as soon as he went and saw a therapist, his mindset changed, his relationship changed, and his business grew.
Yeah.
And I started looking back and thinking how different my life is in what I thought I deserved before I met you and what I do not accept any longer since I've met you.
That's great. That's the work that you've done. I'm just a conduit. I have a certain set of skill sets.
What would you say?
Use.
What is your skill set?
My skill set is, is making for a lot of people, it's intangible, but for me, it's kind of measurable. So I'll start from the top, right? Big, landscape view is I provide my clients with unconditional positive regard. That means the moment you come into my office, I see you as somebody that I am going to look at you in a positive light, no matter what you've done in your life. And that creates some freedom within people to be able to be honest, to trust me, and to, we create this relationship where we can work on your goals. And it's interesting because I always have a vision of my clients. Right? My clients come in and they might come in at their lowest point in their life, but I know that they have the potential to be, successful in whatever they choose to do, business, personal life, whatever goals they have. And so I start from there, right? That's my big, bird's eye view, but it's the interactions that we build, right? Is those sessions where you come in bruised and battered, right? Emotionally wounded.
You've been there with me.
Yes. And
many a times.
Yeah.
Frantic.
Yeah.
Frantic. You have a very, like what you were saying. I want to interject and interrupt you.
No worries.
You have a way about you. You're the weirdest therapist I've ever been to. Weird in the sense of you like to grapple with my issues with me. And I feel like I have a partner. Like we're sparring this out.
Yeah.
You take on the role of the person who I'm trying to talk to when that person's not there, whether it was my daughter or an ex-girlfriend or whatever. You had this way about you of just being like, okay, let's get in and let's get dirty. It's not all, a lot of times I went to therapy and it was all the requirement to find my path was all my own answers to my questions. But the biggest problem is that you have way more tangible tools in your tool chest.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. And I think that's, unfortunately one of the misconceptions I think about therapy is that, a lot of times other therapists just want to create the space and kind of give you feedback and not necessarily create that collaborative process that you're talking about. And that's kind of my philosophical perspective. Therapy is a collaborative process. Otherwise, you are, kind of left to float on your own if I don't, They might throw you a hook. You're talking about therapists that might just throw you a hook and tell you, hey, come this way. But I'm more about, hey, let's get in the nitty gritty and just know that you're not alone. But also let's play this out in different scenarios and how it can go and how you're being perceived and what you're perceiving about the other person is also important.
I did not feel listened to until you heard me for the first time.
Yeah.
I felt heard and listened to. Like you actually understood the chaos that was going through my mind.
Yeah.
And it was comforting. I felt like, and so then I asked you a couple questions, like, like, how did you get this start? How did you come to a place of collaboration?
Well, some of it was my own experience because, like one of the things I always tell my clients is I've been on the other side. Mm-hmm. I've been where you've been, Curtis, at some point in my life, right? For me, it was like my teenage years were chaotic, right? And I was lost and, was probably partying too much, drinking too much, doing stupid stuff like most of us growing up. But, mine was more self-destructive, right? And I had I just got lucky and I found a great therapist that was just like what I am. I mimic myself in being the therapist that he was to me, to my clients. So I try to replicate that because, like you said, I also growing up went to a lot of counselors and I didn't connect with them. I didn't have that special bond that you need to have with a therapist to really grow, to be challenged, to be pushed, and to be told the hard truth sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what changed me. And I was, 18, didn't know what to do, career-wise. I was, also lost. And I was like, well, I can try to be like this therapist and try to have, the same impact that he had on me and pay it forward. And that's kind of what, just prompted me to be in this space with people, which is, very rewarding, and also very challenging sometimes.
Yeah. Why do you think that successful business people are horrible in personal relationships?
So let's start with the fact that I don't like generalizations.
Yeah, okay.
but I would say that a lot of times the business people I've met in session, it's because, they're so driven, right? And we have as a society this rugged individualism, right? And a lot of times we forget that, in order to achieve something, you sacrifice a lot. And I would say a lot of business people, they're so motivated, driven to a fault, and that's great. But a lot of times they don't always work on all of themselves as a person, and they might not put as much attention and focus on their personal life, or they'll just push it to the side and keep grinding, till they accomplish their goal. And then they're like, I have all this stuff and I've accomplished so much, but why is it that I still feel unfulfilled on my personal life? Right? That's what I see.
How much of it is ego?
The ego is I think there's a great part of it.
How do you deal with that massive ego that walks into the room? I know I walked in thinking I knew way more than you the first night that we came here.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I called him for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you get over that?
So a lot of times, there's a saying for us as therapists, we roll with resistance. Mm. We know that you guys are going to come in with that ego, that resistance of like, hey, take it easy on me. Don't attack me too much. I'm here. I'm going to be vulnerable. But I think it's all about timing, and it's all about, meeting you where you're at. Like I knew you were at a certain point that you needed, something, but I couldn't hit you with everything. Otherwise I would scare you away and you feel attacked.
I love the fact that you allow our sessions to be intense and consistent in time periods that I need it, and reconnective in others, in check-ins.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I view therapy a lot like a scuba diver 10 meters down in the water.
Yeah.
Or 100 meters. And they're realizing that they've got like 15 minutes left in their oxygen tank, and they're looking for they're grappling for anything like, oh my God, I got to call Jose.
Yeah.
I need to take a breath.
Yeah.
And so you and it's almost like praying for God in the very last seconds. You're just looking for anything to feel unpainful. Like, how do I solve this problem?
Yeah.
I'm so good at solving my business stuff, but this one area right here, I cannot solve.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times it's my ego gets in the way because I'm so good at what I do with houses, and I'm good at directing people where I want them to go. But kids, spouses, partners, girlfriends, fiance, they're not the same.
No.
They don't respond to directives.
No.
Yeah.
There's a lot of complexity in human relationships. And, I come from the approach of, you have to be a long life learner. Right? And here's the thing, right? A lot of times businessmen and businesswomen are always long life learners, because they're always trying to achieve something. They're always learning, right? There's always a certain path that they're following, right? And so I try to apply that in their personal life, right? And to know, hey, a lot about this. You might know your children's personality. You might know, certain attributes of your employees or your colleagues, but you don't know everything, right? And so figuring out how you're perceived and how you're coming across and what are you trying to accomplish in the relationship. And I think that's where the meat is. Yeah.
My life is very, very, very success driven by what other people think. Right? So if they think I'm successful, then I'm doing a good job. So the freeing thing for me was, okay, I'm going to go to counseling and I'm going to start sharing it. So then I let people know that I am broken and that I'm not the person who you think I am, because that persona likes to come out very much on social media platforms.
Yeah.
Here comes the guy who's got it all together. Here's the guy who knows everything about real estate, right? I know good portions of that, but I don't know anything about, I'm really a novice, a little bit better than a novice on personal relationships and really how to dive into that. And especially coming from an attachment avoidant relationship with parents, both of them dying.
Yeah.
You started doing something with me in our previous sessions, which was the tapping.
Yeah, the EMDR.
Yeah, talk about that.
Well, that's something that gets me excited because
I saw it. Your whole body changed.
Yeah. Because that is something that I will tell you this: psychology is the worst marketer ever. Okay, we have knowledge and we have tools and strategies, but we don't necessarily communicate them into mainstream media and say, hey, we got this, it can help you with this, right? And so EMDR, for those who don't know, it's called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. So it's a type of therapy that is nonverbal, right? Which is kind of weird, but it attacks your memory processing, right? We all have very deep-seated traumas that live in our memory bank, and our memory bank is in our brain. And one of the things we do with EMDR is we help your brain heal from the trauma. It sounds like magic, I get it, but you can do a lot of research. There's MRIs of brains before and after. And so if you know anything about the brain, you know that the brain lights up in different areas, right? And if you know about our brain, it's We have the subcortical cortex, which is our primitive brain that tells us everything, right? It tells us to breathe, to go to a restroom, to eat, to love, all of those great things, right? But it also tells us about fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? Which are the 4 survival responses, right? And for those who don't know, fawning is people pleasing, okay? The other ones you pretty much know.
I'm a people pleaser.
Yes.
To the ones that I love.
To the ones that you love, yes.
Yeah.
And that is, primarily located, right? And so what we know about EMDR is that it attacks the brain in a way that it helps it rewire and get you out of those stress responses and disconnect those memories or heal those memories that have created trauma and that bring you to that stress response of, let's say, people pleasing, right? Or freezing in a certain situation. Or attacking, when you're hurt in a relationship.
Yeah, I do that. That's my crutch. As soon as I get pushed against the wall, got to come out fighting.
Yeah, and that's survival.
And that's when you started this
EMDR process.
Yeah,
yes.
this is when you started this.
Yeah.
Just for everyone watching.
Yeah.
And so give them an idea of the technique that you use to start reprogramming.
Yeah. So that's a great word, reprogramming, because that's really what we're doing. And so this is something that was developed years ago by Dr. Francine Shapiro. She was a cancer patient back then and a cancer survivor after, but she figured out a way to tap before. I use a machine, but you can also use touch, right? Which is tapping, your sides of your legs, left and right, at a certain frequency and intensity. And that's what we call bilateral stimulation, right? We also can do that with the eye. That's why the eye movement is on it. Because before they used to just use the 2 fingers and have you follow the fingers back and forth. And that, stimulates your brain left and right? Who would have thought that, doing a particular processing of a trauma by stimulating your brain bilaterally would create the space to start healing, some of those emotional and traumatic wounds. And that's something that actually has helped a lot of veterans. The Department of Defense has approved it to help veterans with PTSD. I've worked with a few veterans and, helped them in that journey. And it's something that it's still evolving. It's still not out there. And so, if you ever want to address something that you feel like is so intense, and then this for our listeners, that you think, I can't even talk about it, this is the way to go. EMDR therapy. You just talk about, the general aspects, but you don't have to get down to the nitty gritty, and it's a little bit different than talk therapy, right? I think there's a space for both. Right. So that's why I like to do.
We did both in the same session.
Yeah, exactly.
We do the check-in when we walked in.
Mm-hmm.
You would give me a couple things maybe to work on or to. Our big deal that day was writing an email.
Oh yeah.
Responding to the text message.
Yes.
For everyone who would like to follow along, my 18-year-old or 17-year-old started referring to me as Curtis instead of Dad, and started emailing me instead of having a dialogue relationship. So, yeah, I mean... and
that was very painful.
It was, because it brought back post-trauma.
Yes.
So then you were trying to deprogram and reprogram from the things that I dealt with my own dad, which was almost like a mirror image to what was now occurring between me and my daughter.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my life, I was able to look back at what my dad was going through and see myself through his eyes and think, I can forgive him.
Yes.
He was just reaching, he was screaming, I want to love you.
Yes.
I just don't know how.
Yeah. And like you just described what a, great insight and, one of those really beautiful moments in therapy that happen where you are able to gain perspective. And that is something that, you can, gain perspective in other places in life, but this is like an active process. Going to therapy and looking at your issues and, you always get surprises. I know you've gotten, right? Just like you described. There's just moments where you connect on a different level with your life itself, and you're able to take a step back and look at things differently.
Why? I'm going to put myself in the general sense of the word.
Yeah.
Why do I or we sabotage our own success?
I think a lot of it is fear. A lot of it is fear, and some of the things.
What is the fear?
Well, the fear is, am I good enough? Right? Do I deserve this?
100%.
A lot of us have an inner critic that is always bashing us and hitting at us from all sides, right? We all have it. And, a lot of times we start believing that.
Yeah. CBD, I was taking this CBD from this company called Pure Harvest.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it has a little bit of THC in it. And it was taking that was the first time the voices in my head would stop. And I would just be in total relaxation.
Yeah.
And I remember the only other time that happened was kind of the first month I took Vyvanse. And how much more at peace I was because I didn't have all of this dialogue going back and forth.
Yeah.
But the second guessing. Yeah. There's something weird about these mind, because when you're a person dealing with like highly intense ADHD, we're always our worst critic.
Yes.
And then you add on all of your post and your past. And the things that are going on, and then you kind of see all the things that are happening in your current life, and then you're reflecting back, and then there's this back and forth like ping pong match with yourself. And it was that I would relate the night that we did that deprogramming. It was like any of those instances that I just described.
Exactly.
It was like voices stopped. I could only just hear the sound machine in the background of the room. Yeah. And there was just silence. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Yes. And, there's a lot of also, good things about being able to find what works for you, right? So if that works for you, if EMDR works for you, if taking CBD works for you, I think there are some health benefits, right?
Talk about yoga.
Oh, yoga. Well, that's another way of gaining perspective and finding balance.
Your whole, okay, EMDR and yoga, those were two physical responses that you have in the interview.
Yeah, because, I think those are, yoga is like an ancient, tradition that we're barely getting into, right? And it's all about becoming present with your body and grounding yourself. Yoga is a grounding technique.
Right.
Is to kind of like, separate yourself from the world, connect with your body, take care of your body, and, just breathe and relax, right? That's the whole point.
Kind of be in tune with energies that are around you.
Exactly.
Because and you believe this, I know because we've had this conversation, your favorite phrase for me is tone and intensity. Curtis,
correct.
I think the reason why she didn't listen to you is because of your tone and intensity. We really need to work on tone and intensity.
That is accurate. I did say that.
Yeah, and then we talked about the first couple times that I was trying yoga. But there's some huge deal about vibrations. Yeah, the vibration that you give off to other people. Yeah, and then how that vibration comes back to you. I view it a lot like being in the lake, and you're out there on a paddleboard, right? Yeah. And you're trying to just do your own thing, and all of a sudden here comes someone probably like 200 feet away, very far, but as soon as they go by, it creates a ripple. Yes. Right. Yes. Well, that it's an easy ripple, and you can make it through that if they're far enough away. But if they're going super fast and very aggressive and really close, you're going to be thrown off your board. Exactly. And then you're going to be pissed because you're in the water and all you were looking to do is just have a nice, easy day on a paddleboard. And that's a lot like my relationships when I get into attack mode.
Yeah.
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 So
and that's just not you. That's everyone.
every single person.
Every single person, gets, I would say, triggered into attack mode if they feel criticized or attacked or life is hard and you just had, a boat pass like a few feet and they create that huge wake and you're already in the water.
Yeah.
And you didn't ask for it.
There's nothing you can do. It's like it wasn't my fault.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that it wasn't my fault is one of my that's one of my big go-tos that I had to like look back and go,
yeah,
what was my fault?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people's success could really change in their life if they just look at stopping the blame of the other person of the incident.
Yeah.
And start looking back at what could I have done different. I'm dealing with this a lot now as the custom home builder.
Yeah.
My client's expectation are one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The results oftentimes are not going to their expectation, especially when it comes to speed in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Supplies are short, labor is short.
Yeah.
Prices are going up. People's expectations are all over, and you really have to be able to own it, hear it, and offer a good solution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, is like we're all in this shared experience through COVID that has also made all of us stressed, right? So a lot of times when you're, in business or in personal life, you might be, seeing some of those side effects of the stress, right? And you think it's personal, but it's not. It might just be, the accumulation of all of this stress because it's going to show up one way or the other. And sometimes it shows up when you least expect it and in the, in different arenas, right? In business and personal, and so those, let's say those clients, they might be reacting out of their own stress and they want to have control, right? One of the biggest things we've had this last 14 months is we had a sense of lack of control about our own environment, right? And so people will always try to exert control in the things they can to make them feel better, right? And so you might be seeing that in business and the expectations.
What has changed for your practice since the pandemic?
Well, the first thing that changed is I had to close the office, right? Because, we want to make sure that our clients are safe, right? And I had to go remote. And so there was some challenges with that. I do think that the best way to do therapy is in person. But given, all the uncertainty and, making sure our clients are safe, that was our number one priority. And now the good news is we're looking at, going back to the office and reopening the office and, doing
when will
all
that be?
That'll probably be end of June, beginning of July.
Okay.
Yeah. So very excited about that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I know.
I don't like the Zoom sessions.
I know.
As much.
Yeah. It's not the same. Yeah.
I'd rather take a Zoom than take nothing.
Exactly. And that's been one of the things, I would say the only saving grace about remote is that, you got more flexibility with the schedule, right? I don't have to be at the office necessarily to see you. I can be at home and, and I can like, hey, I have an hour here. I can fit you in. There's a little bit more flexibility. So that's one of the pros, I would say.
What is the biggest problem people are coming to you? What would you say your overall issues and concerns you're getting from people?
Yeah, I would say it's the pandemic has tested all relationships on all levels, right? Work relationships, couples, kids relationships, everything. Because, and again, I go back to the stress.
And you're like the dentist. You always see people at their worst.
Yeah. But, the good thing is I do get to, bask in some of the success.
Yes, you do.
Because people do share that with me and I feel very privileged and, that's just, and we're not in it for us, we're in it for them. Right. So if people come and they get what they need and they don't come back, then, that's what they needed.
Have you watched Couples Therapy yet on HBO Max?
I have not.
Okay, I encourage you
I will.
to watch Couples Therapy. It's a very different if anyone's watched this, it's completely different than how you do your session.
Yeah.
It's always kind of like a reflective question back to their answers, right?
Yeah.
Versus
I'm more dynamic.
Yeah.
You know, I do allow some silence for you to process things, but, you know, that's also my personality, and more interactive, more dialogue, more conversation. You know, everybody has a different style. I would say, you know, what you're describing with HBO Max is probably a more traditional therapist. You know,
it's out of New York.
Yeah.
And it's couples therapy, but you see the people come in, and what you were just saying about like the successes, right?
Yeah.
In one of in the first season, you're following this couple along their therapy road, and the most that they've ever been to a therapist was 2 sessions.
Yeah,
and they go 10 sessions with this lady, and they go, well, we're done, and then she's left because now she's put in all this energy, and so to talk to you can't be there. Like, I'm sure you get not attached, but you.
No, we do.
Yeah, you can't help. You're sharing emotions and intimacy with people.
Well, and you are, you know, like, I know all therapists are involved to a level in their client's success, right? It's like you pour, you know, blood, sweat, and tears in the stuff you do.
Yeah.
Curtis, with building and real estate and all that stuff. There's always an emotional involvement in a project. And so, you know, I don't want to say that people are projects, but in a way they are.
Yeah, they are.
You know, and that's what we also put that energy and that effort.
I wouldn't say it's the people who are the project. I would say it's the issue that's the project.
The issue correct. Thank you.
And how they repair that issue is kind of beautiful. It's a great experience. Man, how do people get in touch with you today?
Well, you know, I have my profile in Psychology Today. Just look for Jose David and you'll find me. I also have my website, jdavidcounseling.com. And that's pretty much it. You know, text me, send me an email, and we'll figure it out.
And that is the truth.
Yes.
You're pretty responsive on text message.
Yeah.
I text you often.
Yeah, and that's good. You know, that makes it easier for me to schedule and see people.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes I'm, you know, running here and there, or I'm in between session. It's easier to, you know, do a text than a phone call or do an email.
And I don't know, most people know this or not, but the difficult thing with like, you're the kind of guy I would hang out with.
Yeah.
But in therapy, you have a rule. Like, you cannot hang out personally with someone for 2 years after your last session.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how crazy therapy is.
Well, we have, you know, I would say we have the highest ethical standards in I would say in everything we do. Like, not even doctors or nurses have the high ethical standards, because doctors do go out with their patients, doctors go on vacations, or, you know, stuff like that. They're not as limited ethically, but because of the nature of what we're sharing, right? There's a lot of vulnerabilities that are being shared that, you know, we want to make sure that they're not exploited by the therapist, right? That's why we have such high ethical standards, right? And regardless of that, still there are, you know, some therapists that misbehave, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Even though, you know, we have very high ethical standards that we have to follow and that we believe in.
Is there anything that you would leave people with today that would help them in their mindset to be more successful in 2021?
Well, I would say to have hope is the most important thing, right? To have hope in the future, and to see that, you know, we're getting close to the you know, the end of the tunnel.
Right.
Right. And I think that's very important. I think people need things to look forward to. I think one of the things we learned in the last 14 months is, first, we're social beings. We need people, and you know, we need to connect, and that's very important. And so I see, and, you know, it's been documented that people will actually go a little bit crazy after this, after lockdown is lifted, and, you know, we're off with the masks, and, you know, because that's what happened in the 1920s after the 1918 pandemic. So we're expecting that level of, intensity of people like just, enjoying life. And so that would be one of the things. But I would say my word of caution is also that we also know from the last pandemic 100 years ago that there was also an increase in mental health challenges. And so even though you might have made it okay through it, if you feel something that's out of place or, you're not feeling like yourself, just talk to someone, right? And I'm going to say, not only therapy, talk to your friends, talk to somebody, don't hold it in. Don't leave it unchecked would be my encouragement.
I'm going to leave you with this. Vulnerability is power.
I agree with that.
Knowledge doesn't do anything. There's a lot of people who are smart.
Yes.
It's only the application of that becomes power, right?
Yes.
Applied knowledge is power. Vulnerability and transparency. Who's the lady from U of H?
Brené Brown. Yes.
Yeah, Brené Brown. Yeah.
Yes, she's wonderful.
Brené, she's amazing with that vulnerability and authenticity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you because you are the most authentic dude I've ever met.
I appreciate that, Curtis.
That's why I say you're the weirdest therapist I've ever met. Because
and I take that as a compliment.
You should, because you are so cool. Like you have an ease about you, and it doesn't feel like I'm in a wrestling match with someone who's trying to get me to guess the right answer to their question.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just here to try to get a couple of let's get 3 points so that I can go home and work on those 3 things,
exactly.
right? And you always do that. You always leave with a path forward. And
yes.
And then it's our choice after that path forward, whether or not we do those things that help lead forward.
Yeah.
Anyway, man, I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and this is a great opportunity, and I feel privileged. Thank you, Curtis.
Well, I think you've done an amazing job with a lot of us in the real estate community that I've introduced you to. People who you came to me from I can't even remember how you came to me.
Well, I was working somewhere else, and you just happened to find me through that place.
That's right.
And we connected, and
then I followed you.
And then, I started my own practice, and here we are,
right.
years later.
Jose David, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. All right, guys. See ya.